superficial scratches and perhaps more tearing their clothing rather than actually any wounds to their body. And therefore it still leaves the game finely balanced, and it still leaves the game able to swing either way. Savior looks like now he's trying to take his natural expo as well, and he's put that up, and Yellow looks like he's getting ready to take his as well. So very little to differentiate between these two players. Yellow setting a group of 4 Zerglings out just to harass Savior, join them over with a couple of Zerglings of his own, and Yellow looks like now he's just trying to guard that natural expo of his. Savior content to sit in his base, and a little bit of a standoff going off, a little bit of a Mexican-style standoff going off between these two players, both staring deep into each other's eyes, both with a passion for victory, and it's just a question of which player is able to draw the quickest when it comes down to it. Savior Yellow just cleaning up a couple of Savior's Zerglings just outside of his natural expo, and that natural expo for Savior should be up by now, and Yellow's should be up shortly as well. Again, I don't really think that that's going to make a difference. The fact that Savior's natural expo is up a little bit sooner. He has got his extractor up as well, so he's going to be starting to get that gas straight away. So he might, perhaps, if he times his attack correctly, have a couple more Scourges compared to Yellow. Yellow has produced a few more Zerglings. Yellow investing quite a number of resources in Zerglings. Savior's got a few Zerglings as well, but Savior seems to be content to sit in the defensive posture because he feels he's got the economic lead. He feels he's going to have more gas, so he's going to kind of try and invite Yellow. But we've seen before that players have been able to pull off a victory even in those circumstances. Yellow trying to bring those Zerglings in, but Savior's got his Overlord well positioned just north of his expo to see that coming, and Yellow really needs to, I feel, put a little bit of pressure on here. He doesn't want to just let Savior grow and grow and grow. Savior has got some Scourges out. I don't see too many Scourges for Yellow. I see primarily he's got Scourges out as well. So both players, I feel, with a similar sized Air Force, it's hard for me to count Mutalist counts in this and see which player, if any, has a higher Mutalist count. Looking at upgrades, I don't really see any upgrades for Savior, and I don't think there are any upgrades for Yellow either, although the resolution on my screen isn't as good as what you guys might be seeing, because I'm forced to look at a smaller screen in Windows Movie Maker, so I can't tell if there are any upgrades up there or not. And fans keenly interested in this semi-final matchup of the E-Stars tournament, which has just been an absolute festival of StarCraft. Still waiting for some action to get going here. I hate to use a mean analogy, but it's almost like we're seeing a couple of retired boxers just panting around each other in a ring and throwing punches at the air and not really landing any blows. It's a bit like a geriatric fight between these two guys. But hopefully when the blows do start landing, they will be ferocious between these two players. Yellow still continuing to amass his Air Force. He's got that natural expo up and running as well, and neither player really willing to commit themselves to an attack. Neither player really willing to take the risk, and I guess it's a question of which player will take that risk first, which player, and they'll probably want to bring their Overlords. I guess both players want to have their Overlords around during the fight to be able to absorb some hits as well. But yeah, it's going to come down to who's going to be able to micro those Scourges better and get a better land on their opponents. Both players just using Zerglings to check out their opponent's Mutalist counts just to see how many Mutalists the opponent has in comparison to what they have. It just seems to me like both players should have really very similar number of forces. We've had that one kind of entanglement early on in the game, but since then both players have played very defensively. It's almost like they had an agreement to go back and wait 10 minutes before engaging again. But I can anticipate a fight happening sometime soon between these two guys. Savior still hovering over his base. He's got a lot of Scourges. I have to feel that Savior probably has amassed a few more Scourges than Yellow, and you have to remember that Savior had his extractor up a little bit earlier than Yellow did. Yeah, it definitely does feel like Savior has a few more Scourges than perhaps Yellow does, and that might be the telling feature in this game in the end. But Yellow just patrolling above his extractor. Savior now sending another Zergling out across the middle of the map just to perhaps try and scout and again see Yellow's unit count and mutant composition. Looks like Yellow almost ready to make a move with his Mutalists, now putting them back when he spots that Zergling. I don't know why he did that. And yeah, finally Yellow moving those Overlords across. He'll want to fight with those Overlords in tow to try and absorb as many hits as he can from Savior's, and looks like he's making that maneuver. Savior looks like content. Looks like he's going to insist that Yellow come to him. He's not making any signs or showing any inclination of moving out of his base. He's just comfortably sitting there having some pie, drinking some beer, and just waiting for his opponent to show up. He's sitting behind the door, he's got his gun hung on the wall, and he's ready to take it down. He's polished it, he's loaded up with fresh bullets, and he's just waiting for Yellow to knock on his door so that they can begin the final battle. This is obviously game 1. This is a best of 3 series, so even losing this game isn't decisive. We're just looking at Yellow's first view mode here. Yellow scouting Savior's units with a Zergling. Now coming with the Mutalist, trying to draw Savior out, focusing on those Overlords. Savior chasing those Mutalists, but not too far. Savior obviously wants to fight Yellow now with Zerglings as well. Now the final battle is finally going to happen. Yellow bringing his Scourges in, but Savior with massive Scourges landing on Yellow. Now Yellow Scourges landing on Savior's. Savior does have his Overlords nearby though. Yellow with more Scourges coming in, going to take a lot of Savior's Mutalists down, but it looks like Savior still just has outnumbered Yellow massively in that battle. I think Savior landed his Scourges much better than Yellow did earlier on, even though Yellow had 2 waves of Scourges coming in, and now Yellow, I feel a little bit struggling. Yellow with a couple of Scourges more, but Yellow with a much smaller Mutalist force. Now Yellow's got some Zerglings coming in to try and take down those drones. I think Yellow, I don't know how Yellow had so many fewer Mutalists in the end, but that's what happens in Zerg versus Zerg. You just see the 2 forces collide, and one force is left standing and the other isn't, and it's not always mathematical, and sometimes it's hard to see why one came out on top. But I felt that in that battle, Savior does have +1 Carapace upgrades on his Mutalist, and that's probably the reason why, and Yellow doesn't have any upgrades, so I didn't spot that Carapace upgrade on Savior's Mutalist, and that's why Savior was able to absorb those Scourge hits and absorb the damage from Yellow's Mutalist and win out in the end. And so that extra little bit of gas that Savior had earlier on made the difference in that fight, and that's obviously what he was waiting for. That's why he didn't want to venture out, because he felt he had the extra gas, because he had that Extractor up a little bit earlier and therefore was able to get the +1 Carapace. Savior now once again on top of Yellow's natural expo, and unfortunately for Yellow, he just cannot fight. He's just it's just, you know, again, it's the whole bazooka versus knife fight thing all over again, unfortunately for Yellow, without any upgrades. We have seen before players without upgrades take out an opponent with upgrades, but that's usually when they have attack upgrades as opposed to Carapace upgrades. And I feel the Carapace upgrades were a really smart idea by Savior, because they're so much more useful against Scourges than +1 attacks. So Savior comfortably takes the first game, and just massaging his eyes there. I'm not sure why. He looks a little bit tired for some reason. I think he feels that that wasn't really the most entertaining game of StarCraft he's ever played. But nevertheless, I'm sure he'll be happy with the victory. This is KlazartSC, guys. Thanks for listening. Moving on to game 2 now.